here.
Alan Johnston there reporting for us. Well, I'm joined here at the Vatican by Kishore Jayabalan. He's the director of Acton Institute in Rome. Kishore, thank you very much for joining me. There's been a lot of speculation about the similarities in terms of their commitment to social justice between the Pope and the President. Do you think that during their meeting they will have found common ground on that?
They have common ground when it comes to the big issues of economic equality and poverty, but they also have very different starting points. A Catholic leader and a more progressive secular leader are going to have different approaches. Pope Francis, I think, would care about people as individuals and reaching out to people as he's shown so far for 1 year. And President Obama, of course, is the head of a very large government, a very powerful bureaucracy that is doing things like mandating regulations, taxes, the Obamacare mandate that the Catholic Church is fighting. They're also points of contention. And I actually think that their visions of society would be quite different, even if they still want to help the poor and achieve more income equality.
The Pope has been quite outspoken on the role of globalization and globalized capitalism in not helping the poor. Obviously, the President is the president of a free market economy. Do you think that they can overcome those tensions you speak about and perhaps spend the next 2 years of the President's presidency working to do something on the issue, though?
Sure. I mean, I think President Obama recognizes that globalization has helped the poor. People in Asia and Africa and in parts of Latin America have benefited from trade. And Pope Francis, would also encourage us to expand our concern for the poor, which means in a certain way expanding globalization, but maybe presenting it in a more humane way, encouraging more personal forms of economy and business and of trade. So I think there's opportunity for agreement, certainly.
Okay, agreement, but practically speaking, how can these two men work together on an agenda whilst they might have some technical differences, commonly agree?
Well, that's hard because the Pope is a moral leader, the President is a head of a government, and the President has the power to tax and regulate and do things that actually help people, where the Pope is actually a little bit more on the outside, exhorting, making moral statements, trying to encourage people not to forget about the poor, even if they're not in your own country. You remember that, Pope Francis is also trying to encourage us to look at other parts of the world like Africa and of Asia that often get forgotten when it comes to global trade negotiations, when it comes to technological transfers and all kinds of affairs that actually affect the poor in places that you don't always see on the daily news.
You've talked about the idea of change and this Pope being an agent of change. Of course, President Obama is the president who was known or came into office with great expectations of change.
Sure.
Has the president lost some of that change mandate to this new Pope?
I think without a doubt. President Obama ran on a campaign of hope and change. Pope Francis is running on a message of Christian hope, and there is a difference. When it comes to President Obama, he's now in his second term, 6 years into the presidency. His approval ratings are very low. Pope Francis remains very popular, not only among Catholics and Christians, but even among secular, non-believers, all kinds of different people. I think even President Obama himself has said he has great admiration for the Pope. But it's hard to govern. Everyone's poll numbers come down once you have to make tough decisions. I think even Pope Francis might see that once the rubber meets the road when it comes to making more difficult decisions, which are always bound to upset somebody in some camp somewhere.
Okay, Kishore Jayabalan, thank you very much for joining me with that look at this Pope and what he can actually do, perhaps along with President Obama. And we do know, of course, that President Obama is, what now, 6, 7 years into his term in office. The Pope is only 1 year, so we'll have to see how these two men manage to work together over the next 2 years. For the moment, from the Vatican, David, that's it. Back to you in the studio.
Catty, great. Thank you very much.